Despite a triple dog dare, I am not going to start singing at this point. Understand that my own personal dignity, I'm swallowing it, losing a triple dog dare so that I don't actually start this conference off like the Hindenburg, okay? Oh, the humanity. I'd like to welcome you all to our CCV 2.0, Making Sustainability Work at the Community College. This event was made possible by a number of people and a lot of forces coming together. But I do want to thank the Department of Energy, who provided some of the dollars for this particular event, in particular paying for the speakers. And I also want to, there's some folks in the crowd here who deserve a great deal of credit for this happening. And in some ways, this conference may have been an idea that I sort of came up with, but it would not have happened at all without the work of lots of folks in this room. And so I want to recognize a few of them here. In terms of the webcasting and also the conference logo and the artwork and some of the marketing, Ryan Wing on my staff. For those of you who have attended the monthly community college webinars, and I want to also thank Michael Ray, who's in the back. He's also been incredibly helpful on this campus for this conference. Michael Ray is our recycling and waste minimization officer, so if you want to talk about those things, corner him at some point. He has lots of data for you. But in terms of the details of actually getting everything organized and put together, I want everyone to give a big round of applause to Kim Kreiner back here. And without Kim's work, this would not have been possible. Kim does a lot of our work with students, and we need to remember, of course, that we're all here. While we're here for a variety of reasons, we're really here about students. That's really why we're here, and so we need to keep that in mind. Without any further ado or any attempts at me singing, I'd like to call to the stand here Dr. Terry Calloway, who is president of Johnson County Community College, to welcome you all to our campus. And then after that, we will, I'll say a few things about our keynote speaker, and away we'll go.
Thank you, Jay, and thank you to all of you for being here today. It's great to have such a good group here at the college. Welcome to Johnson County Community College and the Nerman Museum. I know you're going to have a chance over the next couple of days to visit all throughout the college and the campus and our community and see some of the things that are happening here, but also we're equally interested in hearing the things that you're up to and how you do all the work that you do all throughout your colleges and your community. Jay thanked a number of people, and certainly Kim and Michael and Ryan have done a great job, but our college sustainability program just wouldn't be what it is without the work of Dr. Jay Annell. Could you join me in a round of applause for Jay, too? He's done a great job. A number of years ago, I don't know, I guess it was 2 or 3, Jay came to the office and we talked a little bit about sustainability and the things that were happening related to sustainability around the country. And he was very, very adamant about the importance of why a college should be involved in it. And he talked about all the important things like reducing our carbon footprint and getting involved in the public policy issues, bringing in really outstanding speakers like the Colonel, who we're all really excited about hearing later today. All the things that we could do about helping students prepare for creating a better future for ourselves and our planet. It just seemed like such a great place for our college to go next because of our commitments to innovation and trying to set the tone for the things that our college should be doing in the community. All the work that we could do with our local businesses too. So it was a pretty convincing case, and I was very proud to work with Jay as we signed the President's Climate Commitment a couple of years ago and continued on doing all the good things that our college does. Well, and thank you all for what you're doing at your colleges to do those as well. It's really an important step for us, I think, in the community college world to take on those activities, and we're very, very proud to be a part of that. Our students have really actively gotten engaged, and Jay talked a little bit about our sustainability programs, everything from recycling and some of the other work that we're doing. We're in the process of building our first LEED Platinum building on campus along with our colleagues from the University of Kansas. The students are actually building that building, students from KU. That would not have happened without Kim's really outstanding work and the leadership that she's provided. it's just a different college and a different place than we were just a couple of years ago. It's because of people like Kim and Michael and Ryan and Jay, and your colleges are changing too because of people like you. And we thank you so much for all that you do, for the work that you put in place to make our world, our earth a better place, and helping us all understand a little bit better about sustainability, why it's important, and all the things that we don't know today that you'll be creating great education for to help us learn about tomorrow. So thank you for being here today. Please enjoy our college, our campus. If there's anything we can do to help you, please let us know. And keep up the good work. We really all appreciate it. Thank you.
By the way, it occurs to me that I made a couple of omissions when I was thanking folks. Mindy, are you in here? Yes. Mindy Maines has been very helpful in helping us navigate the stormy waters of college requisitions and purchase orders. And she's been a real bedrock for our center since we started a little over a year and a half ago. So thank you, Mindy. And before he believes that I've forgotten him entirely, we have Mike Ryan over here, who's our farm manager, and who's increasingly trying his best Grizzly Adams imitation. Mike will be talking to you about our farm tomorrow when you do the tour. And a couple other folks who just came in here that I want to recognize because they're arguably the most important people in the room. You two, raise your hands. Jordan and Chris, who are members of our Student Sustainability Committee here on campus. And let me just do a little spiel here, then I'll finally get on to actually letting somebody else speak. I promise, I promise. But on this campus, we had students who came to the administration with a request to actually levy a fee upon them to create sustainability projects on campus. So because of that, their presentations to our board, Jordan and Chris are now some of the students who make decisions of how to spend $400,000 a year on this campus for sustainability projects. And they do a great job. So, you know, talk about student involvement, it's as involved as you can get. So let's give them a round of applause. How much of this should I read? All right, now to the main event. Sustainability is sometimes, particularly by people who don't understand it, defined in very narrow ways. And I wanted us to start off this evening by talking about sustainability in a broad sense, not just in terms of definition, but also really in terms of scope. And the person who it was suggested to me would be perfect to do that is Colonel Mark Mykleby, who's here with us this evening. He has a long, distinguished military career in the Marine Corps. And I could go through and sort of list the names of the various operations he was involved in. Provide Promise, Southern Watch, Iraqi Freedom, names that you all are familiar with. So he has a really keen and visceral understanding of what strategic policies mean on the ground. And we're going to be talking about grand strategy this evening. And ultimately, Colonel Mykleby worked at the Joint Chiefs of Staff as a special assistant to the Joint Chiefs, working on grand strategy. And he and a colleague, and he'll talk about this at length today, developed a document chronicling what they called a new strategic narrative for the 21st century. And if any of you are historians in here, anyone but me? Fantastic. I can lie to you. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't. Some of you may have heard the term containment. You know, the policy of the Cold War toward the Soviet Union was containment. What we're trying to figure out now in the 21st century, in a world of increasing resource scarcity, of climate change, what should the new narrative be now that we are decades beyond containment? And Colonel Mykleby and his colleagues came up with some ideas about that, and he will share those with us this evening. Please join me in welcoming to the Hudson Auditorium stage, no, I'm still not going to sing, Mark Mykleby.
I guess I am mic'd up. Is that right? All right. And they were going to try to make me stand behind the podium, but I'm a hyper little guy, so it doesn't work out too well. So I asked if I could dance around out here. So appreciate it. And thanks for having me here. I tell you, I grew up in Minnesota, so I'm a couple doors up the street from you guys. When I grew up, Mom Mykleby still lives up there too. So I love being in the Midwest because, quite frankly, well, I live in Beaufort, South Carolina, and that's where my family lives now. There wasn't enough dynamite to get them out of that little town, but the Marine Corps brought us there, and we love it. There's just no ice fishing, there's no hockey, but we're working on it. So, you know, climate change and everything else, that might be a good outcome for it. You know, we can drill some holes in the ice and maybe fish, but that's about it. That's probably the best thing that could ever come out of it. The rest is kind of dismal. But it's not a no-hope story. That's what I'm here to talk to you about, because, you know, the course of, I guess I got to tell you kind of the background of what even got me to this place. I mean, I was just your average mouth-breathing Marine, all right? So there's no, and I have to say right off the bat, I'm not an expert in sustainability. I'm not. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, I'm kind of new to the party. I mean, you know, long-time listener, first-time caller on the whole thing. But I'm not an expert on it. I live in too big of a house. I got a boat I'm trying to sell, and my wife loves her SUV. And I always mention it. If I write a paper or I give a speech, I mention that because I'm trying to figure it out in my own house. So this isn't a lofty thing. This is very real. We're having very real hard conversations in our very own little house. Well, too big of a house, the McMansion that we live in. But we're trying to figure it out. And at the end of the day, that's what it's about, and about citizens. And I'm going to get to that point, but I just wanted to jump the gun because I wanted to say thanks for all of you. I mean, it is Sunday. And you are citizens that are coming here to try to figure it out. And I can't tell you how great that makes me feel. And I'll tell you right off the bat, I'm a little bit of cynical of Washington, D.C. That'll probably come through in the course of my discussion. Because maybe they lost a sense of what it means to be a citizen. And my whole life in the Marine Corps was dedicated to the idea of citizens and the Constitution. And this is it in practice. This is what de Tocqueville wrote about in Democracy in America. So, you know, everyone has a little yellow, not everybody, but some people have a little yellow bumper sticker that says support the troops. We need to start cranking out the little bumper stickers with the ribbon on it that says support the American citizen. Because it really it makes me very proud to see all of you here and taking on this thing that you're taking on. Sustainability, big word, lots of stuff, and we'll talk about it. I also have to give you a warning. I see that David Orr is going to speak tomorrow morning, so I highly recommend you have somebody watch him because the man steals. So just let you know, okay? David Orr is a good friend of mine, but he still owes me a lot of money. So just take that for what it's worth. He'll probably ask you for some money. All right. So, and I hope you tape that and you show it to him because I want him to know that. He expects that kind of behavior from me. Let's just get to the question. What I like to do. And I talk fast. I can't help it. I think it's Minnesota in me. You know, I'll throw in a couple of you betches, I bet, maybe an oofta or two. But I mean, I'm going to talk fast, and mostly it's because I'd rather get in a conversation with you guys. So what I like to do is just be able to talk about how we got to the point of trying to write a grand strategy and what that meant and what Wayne Porter, Navy Captain Wayne Porter, and I did. Before I even go any further on that, Wayne is still in the Navy. He's out at Naval, in a Department of Defense chair out at Naval Postgraduate School. He's getting his PhD right now. But both of us, we always take the opportunity before we get into our shtick just to talk about Admiral Mullen real quick. Former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Just the fact that he let two knuckleheads like me and Wayne do what we did and allowed us to think the thoughts that we thought, it was just a testament to the man. We were called special strategic assistants, which means we worked just for him. We weren't on anybody's staff, and we called ourselves, we were kind of free radicals arcing around the Pentagon. And it was, he bubble wrap around our head and protected us. So it was just a real privilege to work for the guy because every morning he got up to do the right thing. If you're ever wondering about folks like Admiral Mullen, I'm sure, I don't know General Dempsey, but I guarantee he's the same way. They get up every morning to do the right thing. And they're intellectually curious, they're intellectually honest, and they don't have a political agenda. They're just trying to do the right thing. So I don't know if that warms your heart, hurts your heart, but it was a real privilege to work for the guy. I owe him a lot just for his infinite patience and his intellectual curiosity. So with that, how did he even get there to the point? I was blissfully happy doing strategy for special operations. I was down in Tampa. And we were doing, and that's a whole different story about what we were doing in Special Ops. We were trying to write the first strategy for Special Operations Command, taking a completely different look at the world. And what we figured out down in Special Ops when we were trying to write a strategy for Special Operations Forces was that There was no big national strategy that really informed the strategy. We didn't really know where we were going as a country, so what you do, I mean, you can't just say, okay, I quit because the guys up above aren't doing their jobs. We just made one up. We made up our own ideas about what a grand strategy for the United States ought to be, and we'll talk about some of those ideas here in a second. But in the course of doing the work done at Special Ops Command, Admiral Mullen came down, got a dog and pony show from us, and he thought that was interesting, so we went back to the Pentagon, and he had this guy named Wayne Porter, a Navy captain, who just came back from Bahrain, and Wayne had been with Admiral Mullen for quite a few years. Wayne had just gotten back from Bahrain, where he was doing a year-long tour in the Gulf, came back to Admiral Mullen's staff. And Wayne had always been chirping in his ear. Now, I should also say, I wasn't a made man in the Mullen family. I mean, I got pulled up from the miners to go to the show, and but Wayne had always been, in that circle. So, and Wayne's an absolutely brilliant guy. Thinks in different ways, and maybe fortunately or unfortunately, we think a lot alike. Well, Admiral Mullen said, "Hey, you need to go and figure out who's doing the stuff down at Special Ops Command, and because they sound just like you." So that led him to me, and we had an instant friendship. And this was like October of 2000 and whatever, 8. And so we used to continue a conversation, and all of a sudden in May, somewhere around there, May 2009, I get this weird phone call from Wayne. He's all out of breath. He goes, "Hey, I need your help." And I was like, "Okay, what?" And he said, "Can you come up here to the Pentagon and help me write a grand strategy for the nation?" So I said, "Okay." So how long do you think it'll take? He said, we said, "Well, maybe 2 months." I said, "Okay, sure. How hard could it be?" Well, what could possibly go wrong? So, my boss, thank God, my boss down at Special Ops Command, he said, "Okay, we'll give you temporary orders, 4 months at the Pentagon, but you'll be back here because you're supposed to be running a strategy for Special Ops." I said, "Okay, so sounds good to me." And so 4 months of temporary duty turned into 2 years because that's how the Pentagon runs. So there you have it. But the interesting thing about it was we got up there. I got up to in July of 2009. Wayne and I met up and we said, "Okay, how are we going to go about doing this?" The very first thing that we looked at was, how do you do grand strategy? I mean, how do you do it? Well, you go to the War College, they say it's got to be ends, ways, means. It's all about ends, ways, means. Very linear approach to take on what we are viewing as a very nonlinear world, very complex world. If anybody knows about complexity theory, it is absent linearities. Right? But yet that's how we're taught how to do strategy. Well, that's the first thing Wayne and I said we're not going to do. Second of all, what we said was, you know what, the last thing that America needs right now is another strategy coming out of Washington, D.C. Because right now we've got a national security strategy, we've got a national defense strategy, we have a national military strategy, right? We've got a national health security strategy. We have a whole series of strategies on national bike safety. Anybody ever looked that up? You got it. Might as well look it up. We've got strategies coming out the wazoo, and the problem is with all those strategies, we don't have a strategy. We've got so much strategy coming out of D.C. that promises all things to all people that they just end up being a string of platitudes wrapped up in a big-ass paradigm. I mean, it doesn't do anything. It's not real, it's not visceral, it doesn't connect to Mom and Dad Mykleby in Wayzata, Minnesota. Therefore, it's not a strategy that matters to anybody except for those in D.C. So we said we're not going to do that because we weren't going to be part of the problem. We wanted to try to have some kind of new solution. And I should say this, and we never thought that we had a solution. We just wanted to start a brand new conversation. So instead of looking at a strategy, we said what America needs is a story. We needed to create a story, not to be that we had the answer, but we wanted to create a different kind of conversation because in Washington, D.C., the language of D.C., as you know, is a staccato. I mean, you can predict what it's going to be. It's like a ticket. You just know. I mean, you start getting this feeling it's never going to change. Well, Wayne and I wanted to spike that with a crescendo, something that would spike up and just say, America, wake up. This is the 21st century. And all the promises that we have that you're going to be safe and everything's going to be okay and you don't have to put any sweat equity or skin in the game, well, it's a bunch of crap. That we're going to have to start addressing our role as citizens, as Americans, that we've got to start ponying up in the 21st century. And that nothing coming out of Washington is going to promise you the golden garden. All right? It's going to be something you're going to have to make for yourself. Government will follow, but citizens need to lead. That's the beauty of America. So we said we're going to create a different kind of story. The story for America is not about all the things that we're against, but what we're for. as a people and a nation. That we're not the land of threat and risk. We are the land of opportunity. So why is it that every strategy that we have is focused on threat and risk? Why don't we have any strategies talking about the opportunities that are resident in the world and how we're going to go pursue them? Instead of trying to preserve some kind of strange status quo that is an illusory condition at best. If you remember reading your Lewis Mumford, if you have, I recommend reading The Condition of Man, where he talks about there is no such thing as a status quo, that there is nothing stable in the world, that there's an equilibrium of man. Interesting read. So that's what Wayne and that's why we pursued it. And when we started thinking about that, we started really thinking, okay, where are we right now? Because we took a page out of Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln said, just about strategy, if you can first know where you are and whither you are tending, you can then know what to do and how to do it. So we wanted to focus on where are we right now? And what we saw where we are right now is we're still trapped in the confines of containment. Now, when George Kennan gacked out the long telegram in 1946, he's in the basement of Moscow, and he knocks it out, the long telegram. Absolutely prescient stuff, brilliant stuff. Absolutely the right thing to do at that time. And oh, by the way, and then it comes out as the X article, the sources of Soviet conduct in foreign affairs in 1947, right? 46. You said you're the historian. All right, all right, all right. I think it was 46, 43. I think it was 46. So, so he comes up with a strategic concept of containment, that the Soviet Union was going to collapse on its own contradictions. There was going to be a contest of political and economic systems. Then the military stuff got thrown in with NSC 68 a little bit more in 1950, but that it was a concept of containment, that we were going to win because of our political and economic systems. And we just had to have the patience to allow the Soviet Union to burn out on its own. And oh, by the way, whether by design or by default, in 1947, we come up with the National Security Act of 1947, which builds up the organs of government, things like the Department of Defense, things like the CIA, a bunch of other kind of stuff. But it also creates U.S. code for a 20th century post-World War II context. So we actually had a strategic concept of containment, a strategic construct of National Security Act 1947 delivered. Two of those things merged together, and for a hook or by crook, we got a system going and we're off and running. All right? Now, I'm not saying it was all smooth sailing. I mean, we stubbed our toe a couple times. I mean, Korea, a little stub, a little stumble. Vietnam, maybe a little bit bigger stumble. But we always had that true north. We always knew containment was a way to bring us back in the right direction. All right? Something we could believe in, something we could hold on to, something we could make decisions. And it was a pretty useful and flexible and agile little piece of gear, containment, because we started off with massive retaliation, then we went to flexible response, then we went to détente. I mean, we went from nuclear holocaust all the way to playing kissy face with the Ruskies. I mean, that's a pretty good piece of gear. That's what strategy is about. You always have a context and something that can bring in for the realities that you have in your given time of day. Where is our reality today? What is our reality? Right now, it seems that we're trying to preserve a status quo at the expense of everybody else. How else do you explain the fact that we consume at a rate of 4.5 planets of resources? Thank God the rest of the world's kind of throttled back. We're only consuming 1.5 planets worth of resources as a human species. Either way, the math doesn't work out. And I'm a Marine, and I can do math. I mean, that's simple math, all right? Because Marines were not that smart. I mean, so something's got to give, and so that's what Wayne and I were looking at. And when we looked at containment, we're still trapped in the confines of containment. It seemed to us that we're almost playing Mr. Potato Head with our strategic framework. Everyone know Mr. Potato Head? Come on, everyone knows Mr. Potato Head, right? Well, Mr. Potato Head, you put on the stuff on his face. Well, we ran out of holes, so what have we been doing? Particularly, I mean, the Department of Homeland Security is a great example of this thing. I mean, it's great, our government gets off its butt and creates this thing. Well, that's good, but it's still playing Mr. Potato Head, except we ran out of holes, so we broke out a drill. So we started drilling new holes in Mr. Potato Head, and we started sticking stuff all over him, right? So now we got eyeballs on, we got eyeballs on our ass, we got feet on our head. I mean, we look at Mr. Potato Head's pretty ugly. Right? It's just time. We got to get either a new potato, we need to get I don't know what, a rutabaga, something. But we got to come up with something different for the 21st century context. And so that's what Wayne and I started looking at. Because we noticed that every strategy I mentioned before was focused on threat and risk. We are focused on our here and now. And by the time we focus on the threat right now, but focusing on the threat here and now, it's like Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, right? Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, you can either measure the position or the minimum of a particle, but you can't measure both. Oh, by the way, in the process of measuring, you muck up this thing, but let's forget that part. Position or momentum. Well, we are so focused on the position, but it doesn't do any good. It's historical information. at best. What are you going to do with that information? It might make you feel good. It's like having a whoopee, you know, and you rub your nose on it, and you know, I know where I am, right? But the thing that's got the best information is that momentum, the trajectory. Where are we going as a nation? The structures of containment, the structures of status quo do not give us that. And so when Wayne and I looked at that, we started saying, you know what? Containment, that operated well when we could treat the world as if it was a closed system. A closed system. And you could, back in the Cold War age, talk in terms of a closed system because of the nature of information. But now, guess what? The information age, I think we've heard of it. It's here. There's democratization of information. You can't treat the world as a closed system anymore. It's an open system. If you try to impose a logic, this is Stoic philosophy 101. You know, if Epictetus was sitting here, he'd think we were crazy. But it's Stoic philosophy. You try to control the uncontrollable, you're going to be a miserable SOB. All right? But that's what we try to do with all our strategies. Try to control the uncontrollable because we still think it's a closed system. Wayne and I said we got to shed that because a closed system leads to entropy. Second law of thermodynamics. And we are suffering entropy in space. We get confused. We get more and more confused. So what do we do in government? We throw more process, more people, more money at things. And then that just gets us and do more analysis so we can figure out the position of the particle and placate the mob to make sure that you can say that, you know, nothing's bad's going to happen. Well, you can't. All right? So the entropy is increasing on us. So what we want to do is shed that, start thinking in open system terms. And when you start thinking in open system terms and move from entropy, you've got to start thinking in terms of evolution. You have to start thinking in terms of ecology. You have to start thinking of the connections. And maybe you could tell the kind of direction I'm heading right now. When you start thinking in open systems terms, of interdependencies, because we have these interdependencies in the world. Give it up. China, we're interdependent with them. Right? And that's a good thing. Because if you look at, you know, Darwinian theory, open system, evolution, ecological frameworks. And matter of fact, we start calling it strategic ecology. You start thinking in Darwinian terms, everyone goes, oh yeah, survival of the fittest. No. What Darwin talked about, the most important element of Darwinian theory was, you remember he talks about the stream bed, the river bed? And he talks about that interdependent system of systems, the interconnection of all those little organisms that are living on that riverbed. He's talking about interdependencies. Yes, he's talking about competition. But he's thinking about, in my opinion, I think he's thinking about competition in the classic sense of the original definition of competition. If you do break down, do the etymological drill on the word competitor, it comes from the Latin word competare. Guess what competare means? I just want the suspense to go. Guess what competare means? To strive together. Go figure, competitors strive together. It's not just starting pistol goes, trip the guy next to you, kick him in the head, and skip across the finish line. Right? It's not a win-lose proposition. It's a win-win. And somewhere back way back when, I read that the initial real concept of competare came from the Greeks in terms of the original Olympics, where two athletes would race, but before their big race, they trained together. Because in the process of training together, they made each other the best possible competitors. So then, when they ran the race, it was a win-win because they were the best possible athletes when they ran the 100-meter dash or whatever it was. Did they have the metric system back then? I don't think they did. Whatever they ran it, okay? Whoa, okay. Excellent. 77. Straight man. So we had, they run the race, but it was a win-win situation. But most importantly, it was a win-win-win situation because the Greeks that came to observe the event, they saw it was a culturally enriching experience because they saw the best possible athletes running that they possibly could. Win, win, win. That's competition 21st century style. That's interdependencies. That's living in an ecology. And so when we started thinking through what would be a grand strategy for the United States, remember, first of all, we weren't going to write a strategy, ends, ways, means, because it doesn't make sense. Second thing, we weren't going to write a strategy because we didn't need a strategy. What we need is a narrative, a story about a direction that America's going to go. And given our current condition right now, what do we need to do? And that's why looking at things through an evolutionary term, and I'm telling you, a mouth-breathing Marine, a little bit smarter sailor, together, you know, we're not coming from anything else. We just thought of the concept of sustainability. Sustainability as our national strategic imperative, our grand strategic idea, that if we can move from containment to sustainability, that seemed to map to the 21st century because our enduring national interests are prosperity and security. Prosperity and security. It's not all the crazy stuff you hear out of the War College or coming out of the think tanks in DC about our vital interests, our less than important interests. We have kind of important interests. We have interests in Pacific. We just have, in a global ecology, two big interests, prosperity and security. And oh, by the way, part of that framework of interest is a framework of our values. Because that sets our left limit and our right limit about what we should be willing to do. Because once we lose our way in terms of our values, we're lost. And we've got a lot of recent examples, and we can talk more about that, on how we kind of lose our way once we forget our values. And what are our values? Well, for us, we framed it out, values that are in our founding documents, particularly the Constitution, but most importantly in the preamble of the Constitution. And when you start talking about those values, there's a certain thing that you just can't escape. The fact that the preamble of this Constitution is not only the promise of our country, but it's also our obligation as citizens to our country. And particularly that little bit about to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. So when the hell did we let the posterity half of that equation fall off the piece of paper? Since when? So when we started thinking about sustainability as the national strategic imperative of the nation, we really were thinking in terms of science. We were thinking in terms of what would map to our interests. What is the nature of our environment? Our environment is an open system, a global strategic ecology with interdependencies that we have to be the best possible competitor in a win-win context if we are going to thrive in the 21st century. That's what we were talking about. And why sustainability, just to get real technical, because the ecological definition of sustainability is an organism's ability to remain diverse and productive over time. Diverse, depth, resiliency, security, the ability to take a gut punch. There's no promise that you're not going to get hit again. No promise. You're going to get hit again. And I don't care if the hit is a hurricane. I don't care if it's a terrorist attack. I don't care what it is. We're going to get hit again. So let's start doing some sit-ups and get tough. Toughen up. Quit going to the false ideological choices of either party that promises you promises they can't keep. It's up to you. Pony up. So security, depth, resiliency. That's the diversity aspect of sustainability, of an organism's ability to remain diverse and productive over time. Let's talk about productivity. Productivity means growth, right? That we're growing. But we got to get over the hump given the fact that we live in a resource-constrained environment. Got to get over this resource hump because growth does not have to mean quantitative growth. We have to get to the place of qualitative growth. We could, yes, big badass America, we could learn a little something from a little country called Bhutan, right? Gross national happiness. Now, trust me, I'm from the Consumer Club of America as well, all right? Trying to figure that one out. You know, my wife loves shoes, you know? I'm working on it, you know? And I mean, but so this is a shift that we're making in our own home. But we got to start thinking about productivity, growth in a qualitative sense. Because I'll tell you that Americans right now, we consume. We're doing, you know, we're consuming away, but are we any happier? With people spending 2 weeks a year in their car driving to work. The fact that 1/3 of our nation is clinically obese. The fact that we spend $174 billion a year on diabetes treatment. The asthma's off the charts. Our education system's going down. Are we really growing qualitatively? We just got a lot of stuff. Something to think about. And the last part of that definition, and why it maps to a grand strategic imperative of sustainability, it matches to a grand strategic imperative for this nation, the organism's ability to remain diverse, productive over time. It's open-ended. This crap about, hey, what's the end state condition? There is no end state. There is no end state. When it says sustainability isn't an end state, it's a condition of man, if we're going to make it. Lewis Mumford's The Equilibrium of Man over Time. All right? And Lewis Mumford has a very fascinating discussion about the Roman Empire. Because Rome, I'm telling you, we've got a lot of the same tendencies. Right? We've got a lot of the same tendencies. And I don't think that, that history repeats itself. You know, but as Mark Twain says, you know whatever. But there's a lot of consistencies. And one of the most interesting quotes from Lewis Mumford in Condition of Man is he said, describing Rome, is that everyone sought security, but nobody accepted responsibility. And in the process of not accepting responsibility, they pushed the legions out to keep everybody at bay. Now remember, the Romans had this thing called Hannibal, a little quip that they used to toss out, Hannibal ante portas. Hannibal's at the door. Because they were scared crapless because Hannibal was going to come. Right? Well, they prevented Hannibal. He had a couple elephants, but that was all right. It's just, you know, he went, he figured, Scipio figured that one out and took care of business. But Hannibal did come. His name wasn't Hannibal. He came in 415 AD. His name was Alaric. And he had a lot of smelly, stinking Visigoth pals that came busting the door in Rome, and they sacked the place. Because Rome rotted from within. Rome rotted from within because they didn't tend to their business, okay? That's where we've got to be. So this was a big epiphany for Wayne and I, that we should raise up sustainability to be our national strategic imperative. All right? That's all the mystical stuff of grand strategy. I don't know what it is, but I will tell you this, that strategy, grand strategy, has got to be philosophical in nature. I'll talk about that in a minute. It doesn't have to be a mechanical program, because mechanical programs don't work. Linearities, determinism doesn't work in an ecology. It's competition. It's our ability to thrive in an ecology. We have to focus on those types of things. So what does that mean in a grand strategic framework? For us, sustainability had to be the converging point for domestic and foreign policy to get into the practical aspects. Right? And I talked about our enduring national interests. Right? So how do you pursue the enduring national interests of prosperity, security, and a values-based way? Through a grand strategic framework of sustainability. Well, first you have to build credible influence abroad. I'm talking about credibility, and I'm talking about influence, but I'm talking about influence the noun, not influence the verb. We've been doing a lot of influencing, but it doesn't mean we're influential, right? And influence is an interesting thing. I think there's a finite amount of it, right? So we've got to get in the influence building business, not the expending business. So credible influence abroad, but that means we have to have strength at home. All the things that we're talking about right now, sustainability, I'll talk in a second in more practical terms what that means. But that's what we thought. We had to tend to our home, because once we could build that strength at home, then we could be setting the standard and build that credibility and influence abroad. Because now we close our say-do gap. Because right now we're in the business of saying one thing and doing another. You know? And I don't tend to try to apologize or say that we're all screwed up on all things, but in this one I think we kind of stubbing our toe. To tell India and China, it's like, hey, don't slow down. What are you guys doing? Well, if you're this thing, imagine if you were on the Chinese end of that. Well, 1972, Nixon came over here and told us to come out. We're out. You know? What the hell? Now you're telling us to get back in? Give me a break. You know, because what, we're expending, we're consuming too much? Look at yourself. You know, we got 4% of the population, we consume 25% of the global resources. That's just math. That's just the reality. We just got to deal with that reality. We've got to close our say-do gap. And this is classic George Kennan stuff. A little, I don't know how well known it is. It's published in 1954. It's called Realities of American Foreign Policy. It's just a encapsulation of some lectures that George Kennan did at Princeton, because he got thrown out of D.C. He went to purgatory, otherwise known as Princeton. So that's where he was hanging out. But great book. The first 3 chapters are more about the Soviet Union. But the 4th chapter, real little thin book. The 4th chapter is called The Unifying Factor. I love that title. The Unifying Factor. Not the divisive ideological weirdo factor. The unifying factor. Right? And he talks about our condition here. So this idea that what we do at home, build our domestic strength, will give us the credibility and influence abroad. He captured it. Look it up, page 112 through 114. Longest paragraph you're ever going to read. And in that, he talks about our domestic condition, how critical it is, our domestic condition, and how that will translate into our ability to have effective relationships and leadership abroad. He goes so far as to say that we know it in our own personal life that we're not willing to follow someone that doesn't walk the talk. I'm paraphrasing. Right? He goes in, but he says, even the same in international affairs, nobody is going to accept leadership from a nation that's adrift in its internal development and drifting into bad and dangerous waters. Those are his words. And he talks about the built environment. He talks about transportation. He talks about our environment. He talks about all these things in 1954 because he sees the trajectory that we're on. All right? That's exactly what we're talking about. Strength at home, credibility and influence abroad, credible influence abroad. So what does that mean? That means we've got to start working smart power abroad and smart growth at home. Now, admittedly, Wayne and I, we talked about those functional components. They were the low-hanging fruit of language in Washington, D.C. at the time. You know, so you grab the language you can, and then you warp the hell out of it because that's what you do in Washington. But we were trying to do a good thing. Smart power abroad, smart growth at home. We got to stop in this. Well, I'll talk about smart growth in a second because it's more germane to this, to what we're here. But in smart power abroad, We got to stop leading with our military chin. And I'm a frickin' Marine. I got it, all right? Been there, done that. But I'll tell you what, a little epiphany I had in 2007 when I was in West Africa, and we just announced AFRICOM, Africa Command, that we're finally going to pay attention to Africa. We're finally going to give them the attention they need, that they deserve. And I was pretty excited about it too. I was in Mali. So I asked my Mali friends, hey, what do you think about AFRICOM? And you know what the question they asked me? Who are you going to invade? Let that sink in for a second. We're the United States of America. And one of our closer allies in West Africa, when I asked them what they thought of us coming to the help, what did they ask? Who are you going to invade? That is our face. We are becoming the land of threat and risk because we're so bunched up with angst and fear. Got to shed that. We're the land of opportunity. It's time we start resourcing opportunity. Quit resourcing everything as a threat and risk. All right? So smart power abroad. We have got to become more flexible. We have to become more agile. We have to be more make sure that our actions are more in keeping with our values as a nation. Hands down, period, end of story. I'll talk about it in a second, what all these, what we think that means, functionally and organizationally. But smart growth at home. Now, I know that smart growth, I mean, it's kind of, hip, Andres Duwani kind of, hey, how you doing kind of thing, right? And so everyone kind of rolls their eyes about smart growth. Well, I'm telling you, that's a good, effective model going forward, because what we have to do in a domestic context is start coming to grips with the fact that we have a built environment that is more accommodating to vehicles than to human beings. That our agricultural system is on its ass. We're suffering from an overt policy decision that was made in 1972 by Secretary of Agriculture Earl Butz. Now, at that time and place, I bet you Earl was right. Okay? That was Cold War. 40 years forward, not so much anymore. When you start considering the fact that it takes 10 to 14 calories of petroleum energy to get 1 calorie of food in your belly. Right? It takes 5,000 miles on the average to get a plate of food in front of your face. Right? 50% of Iowa's topsoil is gone. At what point does Mother Earth just kick you to the curb? We don't know, but if the cotton industry is any indication in the 70s, she's pretty ruthless. And guess what? Mother Earth is going to do just fine without us. She will kick us to the curb. We're just not listening to the warning signs right now. We better get off our butts and start doing something about it. All right? Smart growth is more than just cool, hip places to live. It's about these integrated systems, something that I also worked at the New America Foundation. Patrick Doherty, who I work with there in a smart strategy initiative, what we're trying to do with this stuff right here, coined a concept of full spectrum sustainability, the integration of all these systems. Food, water, built environment, transportation, energy, education. All these things have to come together in a systemic whole. And this isn't centralized planning, far from it. The last thing I want to do is have anybody plan it from DC. I want you guys to, and you're already doing it, so thank God. We just got to get the word out. And I think we could build a brand new, efficacious economic model going forward, and I can talk in more detail about that in Q&A if you'd like, but we think we've got some pretty compelling numbers. So just to bring us back, sustainability, central idea, central coalescing, national strategic imperative concept for going into the 21st century. Smart power abroad, smart growth at home, so we get credible influence abroad, and build our strength at home and bring those together. What's that going to take? It's going to take a National Prosperity and Security Act, something to replace the National Security Act of 1947, something that will bring together our civil sector resources along with our public and private resources. We're going to have to figure this thing out. It's going to come down to U.S. code, a shift in U.S. code. And trust me, I had a lot of sucking of teeth when I went to National Defense University and talked to the faculty there. Half of them got it, said, Roger that, I think that's good. Half of them were like, you're talking about changing the government. I said, damn straight I'm talking about changing the government. I'm not talking about changing the Constitution. But remember, U.S. code is nothing more than our present-day interpretation of how our government ought to operate to implement the concepts of the Constitution. There's nothing wrong with changing U.S. code, no matter what anybody in D.C. tells you, okay? It's okay that this year with the agricultural bill and the transportation bill, which is 2 years overdue, it's okay to change those paradigms. That's why they're bills. That's why they're not constitutional amendments. We cannot afford to have 5 more years of crap. Are we going to have the perfect system? No, but we've got to start making the shift now. Why do we have to have subsidized cars? Why do we have to subsidize corn? I said it. Remember, Jamie, when I said this at the Kansas City Chamber of Commerce? Now, I'm a Minnesota guy, had a family farm, so I don't have complete street cred, because that was a long time ago. But yeah, I was on a family farm, corn, dairy, all that kind of stuff. We've got to get off these perverse subsidies, because it's nothing more than socialism dressed up in capitalist clothing, and I don't care what you say. Let's crunch the numbers. And it's having a deleterious effect on our national health, not only on our soils, but also on our bodies. So we've got to get on with that kind of stuff. That stuff has got to be framed out into a coherent pattern. Instead of a series of one-offs of transportation and agriculture and education and energy is separate, they need to come together with a holistic pattern of where we're going in the future. That's what Wayne and I wanted to do. We tried to create a new conversation in D.C. about what is possible, that national security just isn't from our shores outward with guys, like I used to wear a funny tree suit to work, for guys like me to go out and headbutt people into submission. Now, I'm proud to do that, I mean, that's why God made Marines. We go out and headbutt people. But not everybody deserves to get headbutted, all right? Some people need a hand. Some people just want us to be the best competitor. Some people just want to, have us lead from a position of partnership instead of paternalism. That's the area we've got to go to. And so the last thing I'll say so we can get into questions and answers, or questions and me not having answers. We didn't write this thing, the National Strategic Narrative, for DC. We could give a rat's ass. That's true. Well, I'm retired now. We didn't give a rat's ass about what anybody in DC thought about it. Okay. Matter of fact, there was a lot of pressure. You got to punch it up, make it policy speak. So that's the last thing I wanted to do. Again, my litmus test was Mom and Dad Mykleby in Wayzata, Minnesota. By the way, my dad was a lifelong educator, retired as an elementary school principal. So that's another reason I love being here. He understood the power of education. And so that's what Wayne and I wanted to do. We wrote a story, and we said that the three things that we needed to do as strategic imperatives was, number one, was education. We have got to start educating our kids to prepare them for the 21st century to be the best competitors, innovators, entrepreneurs, ecologists, that they have to understand this inextricable linkage to their connection to the outside world, that it's not a machine, that it's an ecology. All right? Second imperative, national security more broadly defined, that it's not just about bad guys, it's about our systems, soils, water, energy, transportation, the built environment, education. These things all have to come together in a coherent pattern so that we can have the right kind of system here to make us the best competitor abroad. And the last strategic imperative that we had was access to and the cultivation of renewable resources. We're in a finite, resource-constrained environment. The math isn't working out. It's science. It's math. It's thinking common sense. I'm getting a sweaty lip because I get fired up about this. I do not get it. I fundamentally do not get it. It's math. And that was kind of where Wayne and I came from. We came from an apolitical place because by oath and by profession, we were obligated to be apolitical. And this is the last point I'll make. We wrote this thing for citizens. Now, everyone remembers Eisenhower's farewell address, 1961, where he talked about the military-industrial complex, right? Well, that's what everyone remembers. And I think a lot of his worries are coming to fruition a little bit. But everyone forgets that he offered the answer. He forgot that he offered the answer. He said, only an alert and knowledgeable citizen will ensure the proper meshing of our defensive instruments of defense with our peaceful intentions of liberty. Words to that effect. An alert and knowledgeable citizenry. Well, I will tell you right now, we are neither alert nor are we knowledgeable. That's why education has to become job number one. Not just because we have to become the best competitors and the best innovators and the best entrepreneurs, but because we have to start figuring out a philosophy of what this nation's about. Now, remember, philosophy means philo, love, sophos, wisdom, a love of wisdom. We tend to focus on technology a lot. Techno, skill, logos, knowledge, our skill and knowledge. But if we don't have a philosophy to inform, a love of wisdom to inform our technology, our skill of knowledge, we're lost. And we have to start educating our kids to that end. This is an issue of citizens, because we can't afford anymore to have a nation of residents that just pay the rent and think they paid their bill. That's what Rousseau warned against. in a social contract. It said the moment that citizens are willing to pay with their, the only thing that they're willing to put in is their purse and not their person, that society is lost. You've got to really take a hard look in the frickin' mirror and recognize, are we residents or are we citizens? Because a citizen recognizes that promise of their obligation to that Constitution. They're going to put skin in the game. They're going to put sweat equity in the game. They're going to contribute. Right? Because at the end of the day, we have got to go where Thomas Paine talked about, 1776, in a little book called Common Sense, very first page. He said, the cause of America is in a large measure the cause of mankind. This is just as, in 1776, that was true, as man tried to figure out the quest for liberty and just to having the God-given right to have, for self-determination and to pursue their own destiny. It's just as applicable in 2012, because what is the cause of America today? What is the global challenge of our day? The global challenge today, I'm here to tell you, is global unsustainability. That's why America needs to get off its ass and start pursuing a grand strategy of sustainability so we can put ourselves in a position of leadership to help the rest of the world get moving forward. Again, from a position of partnership, not paternalism. And we've got to take a hard look in the mirror, because as our Navajo friends remind us, you can't get to a good place in a bad way. You can't get to a good place in a bad way. And remember what good place, and this is the last I'll say, right? Remember what good place means. There's two different ways of describing utopia, right? Break down the drill on that one. You can have, in Greek, you can have an e-utopia, or you can have an o-utopia, utopia, topos, place. The OU kind is no place. The EU kind is good place. What choice? I mean, it's our choice. We can pony up and be the citizens that Aristotle called out for in his treatise on politics. We said the purpose of the polis is to create good citizens in pursuit of the good life. And I will tell you that the good life is going to be that good place. All right? That's what America's about. That's what we're about. That's why we wrote the narrative, is to try to find that trajectory towards the good place. Thank you. Any questions?
Well, it's too bad we don't have anything to think about right now. I'll start with one question, and obviously the audience, you feel free to chime in. But how do we translate this grand notion of a focused vision on sustainability when our current political discourse, which dominates the airwaves, is very one-sided? In other words, no matter which, there's one side of the political spectrum right now which would demonize much of what you said. How do we get beyond that?
Well, I mean, well, first, yeah. I guess I'll try to answer the question first, and then I'll spew out my stuff after. Yeah. To answer the question, I guess it's because guys like me and Wayne, and you know, by proxy, well, military guys stand it up and say this is important. Because we're at all-time low of political people with confidence in Congress or any political person, and somebody involved in politics. It's going to be guys like us, quite frankly, to start talking about it. Now I know, what is it, Agenda 21? Is that right? Is that the global conspiracy to undermine the American way of life through sustainability? I'm here to tell you, I'm pretty confident after 28 years of wearing the uniform, I'm not willing to cash in and just destroy America through this evil concept of sustainability. So that's a bunch of crap. So let's get that off the We have to start addressing in real efficacious form, in a real efficacious manner, the math and the science of our current situation. I mean, we've already shot through 380 parts per million. Right now we're on a trend line of 850. We're going into no man's land real quick. And oh, by the way, that 20-year lag cycle, that's what worries me, because I look at my son, I got an 11-year-old boy when he's 31. I can't guarantee you what kind of world he's going to have. And when I started looking at the rate of soil erosion, because just the way we choose to farm, those are real things, especially when you start considering that in 2070 we may have systemic collapse of our food production system. We just don't know where that's going to be. I mean, systems theory, you don't know when the system collapsed. So we better, when are you going to do it? It took 40 years to create the system we got now. It's going to take 40 years to create a new system. But there's interesting science out there that like the Rodale Institute did a 30-year study. Anybody read this stuff? that per acre, regenerative agriculture is 3 times more profitable per acre than our current industrial model agriculture. So it's not like we don't have the solutions, it's just we don't seem to have the will. And the second, the thing I also wanted to say is when you said the political, we don't have political parties anymore. Remember what politics was designed? Aristotle was a place to converge. Again, the purpose of the polis is to create good citizens in pursuit of the good life. Right now we've got ideologies. They're false faith. The false face of ideology. They have these single source solutions that all they provide are divisive ultimatums. What we're talking about is trying to create a concept where we can have purposeful participation on the part of citizens. It's going to have to come from the grassroots. Politicians will follow. I will also say this, the reason why I retired from the Marine Corps, went to the private sector, worked for a company called LRN, which does ethics and leadership stuff, but the reason I wanted to go there was to learn the private sector, because I think the private sector is going to be the change agent. Sustainability is probably the most effective, most lucrative, and I would say most opportunities-based concept for business. Look at Ray Anderson at Interface. Harvard Business School just put out last month a study showing that over the long term, those companies that focus on sustainability in the classic sense, environmental stewardship, social stewardship, outperform. So there's all these indicators, and why we don't do it is because we don't have politics, is because we have ideologies. What can we do as citizens? I would start calling out your favorite politician. You know, if you're of the conservative side, stop watching Fox News. If you're the liberal side, stop watching MSNBC. Everyone turn on PBS and BBC. You know, and quit looking on the internet to find the things that validate your own opinion. You have to get into a position of, got to get into a place where you start looking to invalidate your opinions, because that's how we learn. We learn. There was a reason why the Ptolemaic model lasted for 1,400 years. Guess what? We figured out, you know, Earth's not the center of the universe. You know, 1,400 years. We don't have 1,400 years. We don't have 1,400 years, so we better get off our butts and start learning. Did that even answer your question?
Yes.
Because that really felt so good to say. That here for you, man. Yeah.
Questions?
Just a comment because of what you just said. I was thinking as you asked the question, Jay, that it's going to happen, I think, from the grassroots. And the reason why I mentioned this on a positive note, I happen to work for EPA, and we have this initiative on repowering America on renewable energy. And they had a competition, so communities could compete. One of them was this town that I never heard of, Perry, Iowa. I looked at the proposal and I thought, oh my gosh, it's the best one I've read. So they already had a site visit from the National Renewable Energy Lab. They've already got a wind turbine, they've got solar, they've got their city hall with LED lighting. They're just charging ahead, and we were teasing them as scientists, and I said, why don't you run for president or something? At dinner, I asked them, how did you get this town with 7,702 people? You are moving ahead. They're just like half an hour northwest of Des Moines. You know what they said? Honestly, they do not talk politics. If they had the current mayor, the former mayor, the city councilman, the educated, nobody's allowed to talk politics. And that wasn't their driving force, but they've seen they just are problem-oriented, and this little town is kicking butt. Yeah. And I thought, oh my gosh, you guys should go up there. They have great bike trails, and they're turning into an old brownfield, an old railroad yard, into tons of solar panels right by a Tyson chicken. You know, I was just impressed. I've seen a lot.
This is the kind of stuff that's going on. For my, this is exactly what's got to happen in America. I'll start with my family. We live in Beaufort, South Carolina. Very red county, very red state. And I don't say that because of one thing or other. It's just the way it is. I mean, Joe Wilson, you know, you like President Obama, Joe Wilson? He's my representative, right? But this is what I did. You know, I was still wearing my uniform because, you know, when we wrote the narrative, we talked about smart growth at home, you know. We took it over to Anne-Marie Slaughter. Anne-Marie Slaughter, she was head of policy and plans for State Department. First woman to ever sit in George Kennan's seat. Yeah. Great lady, smart lady, systems thinker. And we took it over to her and said, hey, what do you think? You know, Wayne and I were fingers in our nose. What do you think? And, you know, we probably were getting our little paper graded. And she goes, this is great stuff. And she wrote the foreword when it finally got released in April of 2011. But so very grateful for that. And so she was very supportive all throughout this time. And I should have said this before. We wrote the actual paper in August of 2009. didn't get released to the public till April 2011. So that just goes to show you how quick the halls of government work. But I was kind of offside stuff because there was coming out of the Pentagon, so there was certain sensitivities to that. But back to Anne-Marie Slaughter, she said, you know what you guys need to do though? This is a great fluff piece, but you got to have some, have to do some pilot projects. So we thought about it. We did some stuff in the foreign context side, the smart power side, which makes sense for a Marine and a Navy guy to do. Domestic side's offsides though, and rightfully so. We don't mess around in a domestic context as military guys. So I just said as a private citizen, I went back to Beaufort, South Carolina, and with the express goal of, we stood up a group, me and a buddy of mine, stood up a group called Beaufort 2050 with the express goal of making Beaufort County a model of sustainability by the year 2050. Sustainability, very evil word down there, right? But we made it an economic argument. We made it an economic argument. So people didn't even, they didn't recognize it as being sustainability. We just looked at the economy and we said this is where we got to go. So we're focusing on, with zero resources starting, and now they're starting to come. Smart grid, energy sector as a new way of getting economy going. Also, we looked at the resources we have, which is dirt, agriculture. We looked at a new food production distribution system, okay, and tie in with that new energy system, smart grid technology, and just regenerative or alternative energy forms. But most importantly, tying it to the education, so we make a living, breathing laboratory for our kids all the way from grade school up through college, because we got a University of South Carolina Beaufort campus there, to make a laboratory in Beaufort, South Carolina, to connect it to education, so we start creating a workforce that's going to be a draw for industry. Made it an economic argument, not a, And the other thing is, it was a little bit hard because I was coming down, still wearing my uniform, working for Admiral Mullen, so it was hard for them to claim that I was a tree hugger. It just was. So I always say, if a Marine can say it, you can too. Sustainability. Come on, jump in the water. It feels great. Right.
But you get to the point when you get past that 7,700, or whatever it was, to a point where the people that control these things are people that have no concept of what it's like to be scrambling around to survive. And as you said before, there's more money in destructive farming than there is in sustainability. How do you propose that we can start?
I think this.
I agree that we all get out and vote for our favorite politician, but
it's in the doing.
It's a difficult conundrum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't say that word either.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, in real homes, in real places, like in my house, trying to figure it out. It's hard. I got that. For us, what we are doing, the work I'm doing with New America Foundation now is a top-down, bottom-up approach. So we got a whole policy framework, which goes to one of your points, though, particularly for the agriculture bit. So the way we do grant strategy well in the United States, and this is going to be a meandering answer, but it is to answer your question. So this is just how we're thinking about it. This is the work that we're doing now. The so what work of this narrative thing is this Smart Strategy Initiative through the New America Foundation. America, the way we define grant strategy America style is it's the correlation of our economic engine to our national security apparatus to take on the great global challenge of our era. We did it for the arsenal of democracy to take on fascism, World War II. We did it, harnessed our economy through the GI Bill, suburban sprawl, the National Defense and Highway Act. We used all those components to foster up an economic engine for containment to take on global communism. Well, now we're defining the global challenge of our era as global unsustainability. So how do you get your economic engine going? So the baseline platform of a grand strategy are three things. Smart growth. 56% of Americans want the attributes of smart growth. That's according to the National Realtors Association. But the housing supply only will meet 2% of that demand. 56% demand, 2% supply. Yeah, that's economics. supply and demand. That's an opportunity space. We got $3.6 trillion worth of stuff sitting on the fence just to converge that. That's a demographic trends converging with economic trends. Millennials and baby boomers wanting a different place to live. And I can get into the details on that later. The second part of it is regenerative agriculture. I just already talked about the numbers. That gets down to the subsidies. So what we have is a budget neutral shift of subsidies to regenerative agriculture practices, budget neutral. And then the third part is a tax shift to waste off of productivity, so that you start loosening up right down to Main Street America for small businesses and individual houses. So much so that we figured out that we could get about $881 billion worth of new revenue a year, and people making $100,000 or less and don't have to pay income tax. Because remember, income tax has only been instituted universally since 1942 as a wartime measure. Didn't have universal income tax before. And oh, by the way, right after the Depression, for those high earners, they went up to income tax rates of up to over 90%. You know, we're not going that way. Got that. But there is a definite shift, particularly when you consider we use 1.5 times more resources than Europe just for unit GDP. We can really tighten our belt in terms of waste. So why don't we start taxing waste instead of productivity? Where does that matriculate down? We're also creating in this strategic framework, the bottom-up piece, the National Sustainable Communities Coalition. David Orr might talk about it. That was his brain trust, or brainchild. So we start linking these communities, whether it's in Iowa, wherever your community, we start linking them together. They're tied to a grand strategic vision, but we start linking them together in terms of policy frameworks, et cetera. Whether it's from feed-in tariffs matches for you, you should do form-based code for your built environment. Whatever the policy framework is that have best practices, so mayors and business people can have access to that stuff. Because most people, at least my experience, is they don't even know what questions they should be asking. They want to do something different, but they don't know where to go in a way that's other than this crappy language that comes out of DC. I don't need a wonk telling me. I want to have a ham and egger like me helping out, you know? Somebody knows how to pound a nail, you know? I don't pound. I'm not a very good carpenter. I tried. But so I don't know if that answers your question, but we're trying to take that into consideration, because you're going to have the connections up high, policy shifts, and the logic of that. And I should have said that the way we frame this out, our bar napkin math, is that we think that we can cut over 10 years $1.75 trillion off our deficit. Now remember, the super committee was only supposed to cut off 1.2, and they failed. So now we're going into sequestration, right? We're talking $1.75 trillion, 4.8% unemployment, $881 billion of new annual revenue, right, doing the tax shift. Right? These numbers are very powerful, so powerful that PricewaterhouseCoopers is now going to run the numbers to the federal budgeting model. PricewaterhouseCoopers runs the federal government budget, has the model to run the budget. They're going to run our numbers. So we're creating a different alternative other than just austerity or Keynesian spend your way out. It's really austerity now is the only choice. We're talking about a whole new different opportunity for this nation, using an economic engine to do what Wayne and I talked about, is bringing sustainability up to be our national strategic imperative. Was that too long-winded?
No.
Okay, thanks.
One last question will be a journey down where the conversations were lubricated by food and beverage.
Thank you so much for sharing with us. The numbers you just spouted off were incredibly impressive, and so is the imperative and everything that you've talked about it. But I'm not really aware of this narrative, and I'm not aware of those. How do I follow it? How do I find it? How do I support it? Who's responsible for getting this? What can we do to get behind this?
Yeah. I don't know. you see me and Wayne. I mean, I got some ideas. But Wayne and I are out there talking, either together or separately. But we're trying to do, just trying to get the word out. But our fear, not our fear, but it's not about us. We probably don't even have it right. I think this idea of sustainability is right. We just want to have this conversation started. So it's about what kind of conversation can you start. So that's point number one. Point number two, if you want to just read the narrative itself, you can just Google National Strategic Narrative or go to the Wilson Center for Scholars. It's posted on there.
Or go to the Connor's website, his biography is linked there.
Okay, and that too. But the good news is, I mean, there's somewhere it popped up like there's a Facebook page now, and I don't know who did that, but somebody created a Facebook page around it. There's all sorts of little weird things like that people are paying attention. And if you read this month's, the most recent issue of Foreign Affairs, the ideas are talked about in there. Now, they won't reference it, but that's okay. I don't want anybody referencing it, just as long as these ideas start getting traction. So the ideas are getting traction. If you look at Zbigniew Brzezinski's book, talks about it. If you read Henry Kissinger's essay in Foreign Affairs this month on China, he talks about these ideas. These ideas, they're not new ideas. I'm a big believer in, you want a new idea, read an old book. You know? So we know how to do this stuff. We just have to get back to it and recontextualize it. You know, that you should be positive, hopeful. Hope, I said it. No, hope's not a plan, but if you don't have hope, it's definitely a human imperative. It's a human condition. And so, what can you do? Have a hopeful view. Don't be pissed off at somebody that's either, you know, I'm just going to guess you're probably a really staunch conservative Republican. Yeah. So don't be pissed off at the lefty Democrat, you know, because we do have a common stake. You know, and get over that, because as soon as we lead our discourse with conservative Republican or liberal Democrat, we've already cut off half the audience. And this is the last thing I'll say, because this is a great quote. Eric Sevareid, you know, he was like the Tom Friedman of his age, you know, in the 50s. No, I'm not that old, but I read old books. Well, I kind of am that. But Eric Sevareid, and there's one of his little nightly commentaries, he described liberals and conservatives in the following way. He said, a liberal is someone with their feet firmly planted in the air. Then he quotes Robert Hubbard, and he says that a conservative is someone who's too cowardly to fight and too fat to run. You know? I mean, I just love it, because he's just saying, you know, how freaking stupid can you be is to lead with a freaking label, you know? Let's go with ideas. That's why they used to have, in olden times, a democracy was based around the what? The ideagora, where people came and expressed their ideas. And from those ideas, they synthesized, you know, thesis, antithesis, synthesis, synthesize a better idea going forward. That's what we're about. That didn't answer your question, but that felt really good to say. Thanks.